Amira walked slowly along the river path, enjoying the calm sound of the water. The morning sun was soft, and the air felt cool against her skin. She liked walking here because it helped her think and breathe. But on this day something felt different. As she reached a bend in the path, she noticed a strange shape on the ground near the riverbank. At first she thought it was a pile of clothes or maybe a sack someone had left behind. But as she stepped closer, she realized it was a person. Her heart jumped. A young man lay on the ground, very still, with one arm stretched out as if he had fallen suddenly. His clothes were dusty, and his face looked pale under the sunlight. Amira froze for a moment. She looked left and right, hoping someone else was nearby who could help, but the path was empty. She took a careful breath and stepped closer. "Hello? Can you hear me?" she asked softly. There was no answer. She knelt beside him, noticing how weak he looked. His chest moved, but only a little. He was alive, but he needed help. Amira quickly pulled her small water bottle from her bag and opened it. Her hands shook slightly, but she stayed calm. She lifted his head a bit and brought the bottle close to his lips. At first, the water just touched his mouth and rolled down his chin. Then he swallowed a little. Amira let out a quiet sigh of relief. Still, she knew she could not move him alone. She stood up and looked toward the fields, where a few workers were cutting grass. She waved her hands and shouted, "Please? Someone help me." Two of the workers looked up, saw her waving and hurried toward her. When they reached her side, she pointed at the young man. "He needs help. I found him like this," she explained. The workers nodded and bent down to check on him. Together, they lifted him gently and carried him to a shaded area under a large tree. Amira followed closely, worried and hoping he would wake up soon. The workers placed him carefully on the soft grass. One of them went to fetch more water. Amira stayed beside the young man, watching his breathing. She wiped his forehead with the edge of her scarf. "You will be fine," she whispered, even though she wasn't sure he could hear her. Minutes passed slowly, but she did not leave his side. She didn't know who he was or where he came from, but she felt responsible for him now. She hoped he would open his eyes and tell her something, anything, to let her know he was all right. After some time, the young man's fingers twitched. His eyelids moved slightly. Amira leaned forward. "Can you hear me?" she asked again. This time his eyes opened halfway. He blinked slowly, confused and weak. At first, everything around him seemed blurry. Then he saw Amira's face above him, kind eyes filled with worry. His lips parted, but his voice came out faint and rough. "Where am I?" "You're safe," Amira said softly. "You were lying near the river. You fainted, I think. We brought you here to rest." The young man tried to sit up, but his strength wasn't back yet. Amira gently pressed her hand on his shoulder. "No, don't move too fast," she said. "Just breathe." The worker who had gone for water returned and handed Amira a larger cup. She carefully helped the young man drink. This time he drank more slowly and color began to return to his face. He looked at her again, his expression trying to shape gratitude even though he was still weak. "You helped me," he whispered. Amira nodded. "Of course. Anyone would." But the young man shook his head slightly. "Not everyone stops," he whispered. "Thank you." His voice was still soft, but the words felt heavy, like they came from deep inside him. Amira felt a small warmth in her chest. She smiled, though her worry had not fully faded. "What is your name?" she asked. "Kato," he replied, breathing a little easier now. "My name is Kato." "Well, Kato," Amira said, "I'm Amira. And you scared me today." She tried to make her voice light, hoping it would ease the tension. Kato gave a tiny smile, though he still looked tired. He closed his eyes again, not because he was fainting but because his body needed rest. Amira stayed beside him, watching his breathing grow steady. One of the workers asked quietly, "Do you know him?" Amira shook her head. "No. I've never seen him before." "Should we carry him to the town clinic?" the other worker asked. Amira thought for a moment, then looked at Kato. "Let's wait a little longer. He's waking up. Maybe he can tell us what happened." The workers nodded and stepped back, giving her space. Amira sat close to Kato, her hands resting on her lap. The river continued to flow peacefully nearby, but the morning no longer felt calm to her. She kept thinking about how he had looked when she first saw him, so still, so vulnerable. She wondered what had brought him to the river. Had he been traveling? Had he gotten sick? Had he not eaten? Kato slowly opened his eyes again. This time he looked more aware. He studied Amira's face for a moment as if trying to remember something. "You saved me," he said again, his voice clearer now. Amira smiled shyly. "I just helped. That's all." Kato shook his head. No, it is more than that. He took a slow breath. I think I collapsed because I walked too long without water. I was trying to reach the town. I didn't know I was so tired. Amira nodded. You should rest more. You're safe now. Kato looked around at the shade, the workers, and the quiet trees. I thought I would not wake up, he said softly. But you did, Amira replied. And now you can recover. He stared at her with gratitude so deep it made her feel a little shy. Thank you, Amira, he said. I owe you. You don't owe me anything, she said quickly. Just take care of yourself. But Kato's eyes said something different. He clearly believed he owed her more than she realized. As they sat there under the shade of the tree, the wind moved gently through the leaves. The river sounded soft and steady, almost like it was telling them everything was going to be all right. Amira didn't know what would happen next, but she knew this moment would stay with her. She had helped a stranger, and for some reason, it felt important, like the beginning of something she could not yet understand. For now, all she cared about was that Kato was safe and awake. She didn't know that this simple act of kindness would soon lead to something surprising, something she never expected. But for this moment, she simply sat beside him, letting the quiet air settle around them, grateful that she had been there at the right time at the right place by the river that morning. Amira opened her small shop early the next morning, just as the sun was rising. Her shop was simple but warm, with shelves of handmade baskets, clay pots, small soaps, and a few woven mats she sold to travelers and local families. She swept the front step, humming softly as she worked. The quiet of the morning made her feel peaceful. She didn't expect anything unusual to happen. She certainly didn't expect to see Kato again so soon. But just as she placed a basket of fruit on the counter, she heard footsteps outside. Slow, steady steps. She looked up and saw Kato standing in the doorway. He looked much stronger than he had the day before. His face had color again, and he carried himself with calm confidence. He still looked a little tired but not weak. Amira blinked in surprise. Kato? You're awake early, she said gently. Kato stepped inside quietly. He didn't smile, but his eyes held a thoughtful calm. He stood with his hands behind his back, as if he had been practicing what he was going to say. Amira, he began, I came to see you. Amira nodded. Of course. How are you feeling today? I am better, he said. Much better because of you. Amira waved her hand lightly. I only gave you water and shade. The workers helped too. Kato shook his head. You were the one who stopped. You were the one who called for help. You are the reason I am standing here this morning. Amira felt a small warmth in her chest again. She didn't know what to say to that, so she simply smiled and said, I'm glad. Kato looked around her shop for a long moment, as if examining every basket and every pot. Then he turned back to her with a serious expression. I need to thank you, he said. You already thanked me yesterday, Amira replied, trying to keep her tone light. You should focus on resting. No, Kato said firmly but politely. I need to thank you in a special way. Something you will not forget. Amira raised her eyebrows. A special way? Kato nodded. There was a long pause between them. Amira didn't know what he meant, but she could tell he wasn't joking. He wasn't the kind of person who used big words without meaning them. His eyes held something quiet and steady, something that made her feel like he had already made up his mind. What are you planning? She asked with a soft laugh, trying to break the seriousness in the air. Kato did not laugh. I will not tell you today, he said simply. But I want you to come to the town square tomorrow evening. I will show you then. Amira blinked again. She didn't know how to respond. She looked around her small shop, then back at him. The town square? Tomorrow evening? Yes, he said. At sunset. Amira folded her arms gently. Kato, you don't need to do something big. Really. I'm just happy you're well. Kato's expression softened, but only a little. Amira, I have to do this. Please come. It means something to me. The way he said it made something flutter in her chest. Not romantic but serious. Like he had something important inside him and wanted her to see it. She didn't understand it, but she felt she couldn't say no. All right, she said quietly. I'll come. Kato nodded once, grateful. Thank you. There was a small silence between them. Amira waited for him to say more, but he didn't. Instead, he looked around her shop one more time as if memorizing something, then turned to leave. Before walking out, he paused at the door. I will work today, he said. I have much to prepare. Amira tilted her head. Work? What kind of work? Kato simply said, you will see, and stepped outside, leaving her with more questions than answers. After he left, Amira stood still for a long moment, staring at the doorway. She wasn't frightened. She wasn't even worried. Just curious, very curious. Cato didn't seem like the type to plan anything harmful or strange. But he did seem like someone who kept many thoughts inside his mind, someone who carried quiet secrets. As the day went on, Amira tried to focus on her work. She cleaned a row of clay bowls, arranged a shelf of soap, moved a basket of dried herbs, and helped a few early customers. But every few minutes, her mind drifted back to Cato. What was he planning? Why did he sound so serious? Why did he speak as if the surprise was something big? Her curiosity grew even more when she stepped outside for a break and saw a pair of villagers whispering near the road. She didn't hear what they said, but they kept glancing toward the center of town. One of them held a bundle of wood under his arm. Another carried brushes and a small jar of paint. Amira looked at them as they hurried down the road. She wondered if Cato had asked them for help. She wondered what he needed wood and paint for. Throughout the afternoon, she noticed more and more people carrying materials toward the town square. Light pieces of wood, small stones, a bag of clay, even a few cloths. Amira's interest grew with every passing moment. Something was definitely happening, and she had the strange feeling she was the only one who didn't know what it was. Whenever she tried to ask someone, they smiled but shook their heads. "We can't tell you," one woman said. "But you should come tomorrow." "You will see," another man told her, echoing Cato's words. Amira sighed, half frustrated, half amused. "Everyone knows except me," she murmured as she went back to her shop. The sun slowly sank and the sky glowed with soft gold. Amira closed her shop for the night, but she didn't stop thinking about Cato's request. She replayed the moment he stood in her doorway, his voice quiet but firm, his eyes holding something sincere. She remembered the way he said he needed to thank her in a special way, as if it mattered to him deeply. Later, when she prepared dinner at home, her thoughts drifted again. She wondered if she should dress nicely for tomorrow evening, or just wear her usual clothes. She wondered if the surprise would be small or big. She wondered why she felt a little nervous, as if something significant was waiting for her. That night, long after the lamps were blown out, Amira lay awake in her bed. She watched shadows dance across her ceiling as the moonlight shifted. She wasn't frightened, just curious. There was something about Cato, something calm, thoughtful, and a little mysterious, that made her feel like tomorrow would bring something important. She thought about the moment she found him by the river. She hadn't expected to see him again. She never imagined that simple act of kindness would lead to this strange invitation. She didn't know what Cato planned, but she felt it would change something. Maybe not something huge, but something meaningful. Before she finally closed her eyes, she whispered to herself, "Tomorrow I will see." And she drifted to sleep with a quiet mix of curiosity and hope, waiting for whatever surprise the next evening would bring. Amira opened her shop early the next morning, just as she always did, but her mind was not calm like usual. She kept thinking about Cato and his strange request. She tried to push the thought away as she arranged baskets, dusted shelves, and lit a small oil lamp. But curiosity followed her everywhere. She kept glancing toward the street outside, wondering what the villagers were talking about, wondering if Cato was already somewhere working on whatever secret he had planned. The morning sun warmed the roof of her small shop, but the air inside felt full of questions she could not answer. As the sky brightened, she noticed more people walking by than usual. Some walked with tools over their shoulders. Others carried bundles of wood. A few carried clay wrapped in cloth, holding it carefully so it wouldn't dry out. Amira frowned as she watched them. It was not normal for so many villagers to carry supplies this early. She stepped outside and looked around. Two women stood under a mango tree whispering to each other. One of them held a small bag of paint powder. Amira approached them slowly. "Good morning," she greeted them politely. They both smiled warmly. "Good morning, Amira." Amira looked at the bag one woman carried. "Are you painting something?" The women exchanged a quick look, then giggled softly. "We are helping with something in the town square." Amira raised an eyebrow. "Is this about Cato?" The women pressed their lips together and tried not to laugh. "We cannot say." Amira sighed through her nose. "Everyone is being secretive. It must be something big." One of the women leaned closer and whispered, "It is something special." Then she straightened herself quickly. "But you will see soon." They walked away before Amira could ask anything else. Amira stood there, confused but curious. She walked back into her shop and shook her head. "This is strange," she said softly to herself. She tried to work, but each time she arranged a basket or folded a cloth, her mind returned to Cato. What was he doing? Why did he need wood? Why clay? Why paint? Why did so many villagers seem excited about it? Around late morning, a young boy named Lumo ran past her shop carrying a stack of flat wooden boards. He was small but strong, and he ran as if he was late for something important. Amira called out, "Lumo, what are you doing with all that wood?" Lumo stopped, but only for a second. His eyes sparkled with excitement. "I'm helping Kato," he said. "Helping him with what?" Amira asked. Lumo grinned. "I can't tell you." "Why not?" "Kato said it's a surprise," the boy replied proudly. Amira put her hands on her hips. "Everyone keeps saying the same thing." Lumo laughed and began running again. "You will see soon," he shouted as he disappeared around the corner. Amira sighed and rubbed her forehead. "This is becoming unbelievable," she muttered. She closed her shop door halfway and leaned against the counter. A few minutes later, two older men passed by carrying a large clay pot. The pot looked heavy and both of them walked slowly. Amira stepped outside again. "Is that for Kato too?" she asked. "Yes," one of the men answered. "What is he doing with it?" The men looked at each other, smiled, and then continued walking without another word. Amira could not help laughing a little in frustration. "This town has turned into a secret club," she said under her breath. Throughout the rest of the morning and early afternoon, she kept seeing signs of activity. A group of teenagers carried long sticks. A mother and her daughter carried pieces of smooth stones. A man pushed a cart full of sand. Everyone seemed to be heading in the same direction, the town square. And every time she tried to ask, she received the same answer, "You will see soon." Even her customers seemed distracted. A woman buying soap whispered to her friend as she paid, "I wonder if he finished the carving." Another customer looked excited, not even noticing she gave Amira the wrong coin. Amira had to gently hand it back and give her the correct change. By the time the sun reached the middle of the sky, Amira grew even more curious. She stepped outside during her lunch break and walked halfway down the street. She wasn't planning to go to the town square yet, but she wanted to see if she could catch a glimpse of what was happening. As she walked toward the center of town, she could hear faint sounds, hammering, scraping, the murmur of people talking. But once she reached the corner, she found a group of villagers standing in a wide circle, blocking the view on purpose. One woman noticed Amira approaching and quickly stepped in front of her. "Oh, Amira." "Hello," the woman said brightly. Amira narrowed her eyes. "Why are you blocking the view?" The woman laughed nervously. "No reason. We are just standing." Amira raised a suspicious eyebrow. "You are blocking me from seeing whatever is happening in the square, aren't you?" The woman tried to hide her smile. "Amira, please. Kato asked us not to let you see anything until tomorrow." Amira gasped. "He actually told people to hide it from me?" The woman nodded. Amira crossed her arms and looked annoyed, but she couldn't help smiling too. "This is madness," she said softly. "It is something special," the woman whispered again. "Be patient." Amira turned around and walked back to her shop. She was frustrated but also excited. Kato had managed to involve so many people. The whole town seemed busy with his idea. And it was all because of what she had done for him by the river. She felt a warm feeling spread through her chest. She didn't want a grand thank you, but the fact that Kato cared so deeply made her heart feel light. As the afternoon moved forward, she continued working but with less focus. Her eyes kept drifting toward the street. Sometimes she heard carts passing by with more supplies. Sometimes she heard laughter. Sometimes she heard instructions being shouted. It felt like the whole town was preparing for something important. Near sunset, a young girl named Bina entered her shop holding a small bucket of paintbrushes. She looked tired but happy. "Bina," Amira said gently, "were you helping Kato too?" Bina gave a big smile. "Yes, everyone is helping. He is working so hard." Amira's curiosity grew even more. "Tell me just one thing," she begged. "Is it something small or something big?" Bina paused. "It's something beautiful," she said softly. "Beautiful?" Amira repeated. Bina nodded. "But I can't say more. Kato wants you to see it first." Amira sighed again. "All right, I will wait." As the sky turned pink and orange, the whispering and movement around town slowly settled. People returned home, tired but cheerful. The workers washed their hands. The children who helped ran back to their houses. The activity in the town square became quiet. Amira knew the work was done for the day. She stood outside her shop and looked toward the square. She still had no idea what Kato was building, but now she felt something stronger than curiosity. She felt anticipation. She felt like tomorrow evening might bring something she would remember for a very long time. She locked her shop and walked home slowly, thinking about Cato's serious eyes, the villagers' excited smiles, and the mystery waiting for her. She whispered to herself, "Tomorrow? I will finally see." Amira walked toward the town square with slow, careful steps. The evening sky glowed in soft gold and purple, and the warm air carried the sound of gentle chatter. She felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. All day she had been wondering, why had Cato gathered so many people? What had he been building? Why had everyone kept it a secret from her? Now, finally she was going to find out. Cato was waiting for her near the center of the square. He stood tall and quiet, his hands behind his back, his face calm but his eyes shining with energy. When he saw her approaching, he gave a small smile, one that looked both proud and grateful. He nodded once as if asking silently, "Are you ready?" Amira took a breath and stepped closer. She could see that the entire village had gathered around the square. Children sat on stones, old men leaned on their walking sticks, and women fanned themselves while whispering to each other. Everyone was watching her and she felt her heart beat faster. She did not know what to expect, but she knew something big was about to happen. Cato lifted one hand and gently called out, "Everyone, please come closer." The crowd moved inward, forming a wide circle around him and Amira. A hush fell over the villagers. Even the children became quiet. The warm evening breeze brushed across Amira's face as she stood there, waiting, her hands clasped together in front of her. Cato stepped aside, revealing something behind him that was covered with a large cloth. Amira had not noticed it at first because it blended with the shadows of the square. But now that he stood away from it, she could see that it was tall and wide, larger than she imagined it would be. He looked at her with soft eyes. "Amira," he said, "this is for you." Her breath caught in her chest. Cato took the edge of the cloth and slowly pulled it down. The cloth fell to the ground like a wave. Amira's eyes widened and she gasped loudly. In front of her stood a beautiful handmade bench, carved from smooth, rich wood. Its design was simple but elegant. The backrest curved gently like the shape of a rising moon, and the legs were carved with small patterns of leaves and flowing water. It looked strong, sturdy, and welcoming, as if inviting tired travelers to sit and rest. But beside the bench was something even more surprising, a small decorated water shelter made of clay, wood, and bright paint. It was shaped like a tiny hut with an open front. The roof was painted in warm colors, red, orange, and yellow, and the walls were carved with soft patterns. Inside the shelter was a clay pot filled with clean water, placed on a smooth stone table to keep it cool. The shelter looked like a resting place created with love, protection, and purpose. At the top of the water shelter, written in neat hand-carved letters, were the words, "In honor of Amira's kind heart." Amira covered her mouth with both hands. Her eyes filled with tears. She shook her head slowly, unable to believe what she was seeing. The bench, the shelter, the carvings, the colors, it was all for her. The villagers clapped loudly, their cheers rising like a joyful breeze. Some even whistled. Children jumped happily, pointing at the bright roof of the shelter. Old women smiled warmly, nodding with respect. Amira felt her knees weaken. She had never received anything like this. She had never expected anything like this. All she had done was help someone in need. She had brought water to a weak stranger. She had lifted him into the shade so he could breathe freely. She had called workers to help her. She had done what any good person should do. But Cato had taken that simple kindness and turned it into something beautiful, something permanent, something that the whole town could use. Cato stepped forward and stood beside her. "You saved my life," he said quietly. "You did not know me. You did not hesitate. You did not walk past. You helped me because your heart is good. I wanted to give something back, not just to you but to the whole village so everyone will remember the kindness you showed." Amira lowered her hands slightly, her voice trembling. "Cato, this is too much." He shook his head. "No, it is not enough. But it is what I can do." She looked around. Everyone was smiling at her. She could feel their appreciation, not just for the bench or the shelter but for the kindness they had seen in her. The warmth of their smiles made her heart swell. A little girl stepped forward and touched the bench gently. "It's beautiful," she whispered. An old man nodded. "This bench will be here for many years. Travelers will rest on it. Children will sit on it. Friends will talk here. It will be a place of peace." Another villager added, "And the water shelter will help everyone who passes through. Your kindness will be remembered every day." Amira felt tears run down her cheeks. She wiped them quickly but more followed. She was not crying from sadness. She was crying from a deep feeling she could not describe, something soft, warm, and powerful at the same time. Cato looked at her gently. I know you did not help me to receive anything in return. I know you expected nothing. That is why I wanted this to be special. Because true kindness is rare and it should be honored. Amira looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. Thank you, Cato. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, he replied. Your heart has already spoken. A soft breeze passed through the square, making the roof of the water shelter rustle lightly. The clay pot inside glimmered in the fading light. Everything looked peaceful, as if the village itself was smiling. Amira walked slowly toward the bench. She touched the smooth wood, feeling the steady strength beneath her fingers. Then she touched the shelter. The carvings were detailed and gentle. She could see the work, the time, and the love that had been placed into every stroke. She turned back to Cato. You worked all day, and days before that. You asked the whole village to help. He nodded. They wanted to. They said a kindness like yours deserved a kindness in return. The villagers nodded in agreement. Amira felt overwhelmed again, but this time she let herself smile through her tears. She looked around and realized she was surrounded by people who cared, not just about the bench, not just about the shelter, but about the spirit behind it. As the evening light dimmed and lanterns were lit around the square, the village continued to celebrate. Children played near the new bench. Women touched the carvings and admired the colors. Men talked proudly about how they had helped lift, carve, or paint. And all the while, Amira stood near the shelter, feeling something she had never felt before. A deep, powerful sense of belonging and gratitude. Cato stood quietly beside her, watching the villagers enjoy the gift he had created. He didn't need applause. He didn't need praise. For him, this moment, the look on her face, the joy in the village, was enough. The stars began to appear in the sky, and the warm night wrapped itself gently around them. The bench and the shelter stood strong, shining softly under the lantern light, symbols of kindness, gratitude, and the bond that had formed between two strangers. Amira whispered softly, "This is beautiful." And Cato answered, "So is kindness." Amira stood near the newly built shelter, her hands folded in front of her, still feeling the warmth of the villagers' applause around her. Her eyes moved from the bench to the water shelter and back to Cato. She could hardly believe what had just happened. A simple act of kindness, helping a stranger by the river, had turned into this beautiful surprise. The carved words, the colors, the care in every detail, had touched her in a way she never expected. She had never imagined that helping someone could create such a deep, lasting feeling. Cato stepped forward from beside the shelter. His movements were calm and deliberate, and his eyes looked directly at hers. "Amira," he said quietly but clearly, "I wanted to thank you sincerely. You saved my life yesterday. You gave me help when you didn't even know me. You acted from your heart. I cannot thank you enough with words." His voice was soft, yet filled with steady meaning. The villagers around them had quieted, watching the moment. Even the children had stopped playing for a moment, sensing the importance of what was happening. Amira shook her head gently, feeling tears begin to well in her eyes. "Cato, you don't have to. I was only doing what anyone should do," she said. Her voice trembled slightly. "Anyone would have helped." Cato smiled faintly. "No, not anyone. Not everyone would stop. Not everyone would care enough to help when it is not convenient. You did. You truly did." He paused for a moment, letting the words sink in. "That is why I wanted to do something meaningful in return. I wanted the town to see, and you to see, that your kindness matters." Amira's chest felt full. She had never received such a thoughtful gift in her life. She looked around the square. The villagers' faces glowed with quiet pride, smiles wide and warm. Children were pointing at the bench and shelter, talking excitedly to each other about the beautiful carvings. Some of the older villagers whispered among themselves, nodding at one another, saying how rare it was to see such kindness in a single moment turn into something that could benefit everyone. She turned back to Cato. "I don't even know what to say," she admitted softly. "This is beyond anything I could imagine." Cato shook his head, but his eyes held a gentle light. "You don't need to say anything. Just promise me something." Amira looked at him curiously. "What is that?" she asked. "Promise me," Cato said, "that you will continue being who you are. That you will keep helping people, showing kindness even in small ways. It can change the world little by little." Amira smiled faintly. "I can promise that. But it feels strange to think that helping one person could matter so much." "It does," Cato said. "Kindness always matters. Sometimes, it returns in ways we do not expect. Sometimes, it grows and touches more lives than we imagine. Amira's mind drifted back to the moment by the river. She remembered how weak and tired Cato had looked, how vulnerable, and how much he had wanted to help. At the time she had thought it was just a small act, something simple, nothing extraordinary. But now, standing in the town square, seeing the shelter and the bench, hearing the whispers of admiration, she realized how one small decision could create a ripple of joy and care. The sun was setting fully now, painting the sky in deep orange and purple. Lanterns were lit around the square, casting soft light on the bench, the shelter, and the villagers' smiling faces. Amira reached out and touched the smooth wood of the bench. It was solid and warm under her fingers. She ran her hand along the carved letters of the shelter. The words, "In honor of Amira's kind heart," seemed to glow softly in the light. She felt her heart swell with a mix of humility and joy. Cato watched her, smiling slightly. "I could not have built this alone," he said. "The villagers helped. Everyone wanted to honor you. And now you see what a community can do when someone shows care. This is not only about me or you, it is about everyone who sees the beauty of kindness." Amira looked around at the villagers. Everyone had played a part, even the smallest child who had carried a brush or clay. Everyone had joined in, and together they had created something lasting. She realized that kindness did not just impact one life. It could inspire many, and Cato had shown her that in the most beautiful way. She took a deep breath, feeling light and calm. "Thank you, Cato," she said again. "I will never forget this. I didn't expect any of this. It is more than I could have hoped for." Cato nodded. "And I will never forget what you did for me. Not just because it saved my life but because it showed me that good hearts exist. That is more valuable than anything else." From that day forward, Amira and Cato grew close. They became friends who worked together to help others in the town. Sometimes they would sit on the bench, talking quietly, planning small acts of kindness. A bag of food for a family in need, a repaired roof for an elderly neighbor, a day of cleaning the river path. Every action they took together was small, but each left a mark and the villagers noticed. They admired the pair not only for their care for the town but for the way they inspired others to act with goodness. People often said the water shelter felt brighter than it had when it was first built. Travelers would stop by, pause to rest, and marvel at its beauty. Children would laugh around the bench and make up games that taught cooperation and friendship. Everyone agreed that the warmth of the shelter came from more than wood and clay. It came from the kindness that had built it. Amira and Cato never stopped helping, never stopped encouraging each other, and never forgot how it all began. One small act beside the river when a girl had stopped to care for someone she did not know. That small act had changed not only Cato's life but hers, and the lives of the people in the town as well. It had shown them all that kindness could grow into something that lasts, something that touches hearts far beyond what anyone could imagine. And every time someone passed the bench or the shelter, they whispered about the kindness behind it. Travelers would ask the villagers why it was built, and the story was told again. How Amira saved Cato's life and how he in turn created a gift that honored her heart. The story became part of the town, reminding everyone that small acts of care could lead to incredible things. Amira often looked at Cato and smiled quietly. She knew their friendship had grown stronger than words could describe. She had never expected such a thoughtful gift. She had never expected that a single moment of kindness would leave a mark not just on one person, but on an entire town. And the villagers, children, and neighbors all agreed. The water shelter and the bench were not just made of clay and wood, they were built from the most powerful thing of all, kindness.